Commissioner Bradley, and by default, I am the chairman tonight. So welcome to the July 9th meeting. I guess the first thing we need to do tonight is do the roll call. So Michelle,
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Here.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Here.
Commissioner Banton, Commissioner Bradley,
here.
Commissioner Fowler,
Present.
Commissioner Hayden,
Present.
Commissioner Hubman,
Here.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Present.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Williams, Chair Boaz. And you have 8 present.
Okay. The first order of business tonight is the approval of our minutes from our last meeting on June 17th. They were distributed in a packet of information to you. I'll give you just a minute to take a look at them and refresh your memory on them. At this time, I'll ask, is there a motion for approval of the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll, please?
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayden,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Abstain.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams, Chair Bradley,
Aye.
and the motion passes with all present voting aye and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you. We are going to have a slight change of the agenda tonight to accommodate time. So if you would look at PDA 00925 CMP, the Sustainability and Climate Plan, Alicia is going to present on that.
Hello. Thank you all for having me this evening. My name is Alicia Russell, Sustainability Director in the Planning and Urban Design Agency. And I'm going to give a brief presentation about the status update of the Sustainability and Climate Plan, a quick overview. All right, let's see. Make sure we get this clicking. Oh, we have a few. Okay, we're a little out of order here, so I'm going to just fast forward since we've rearranged things. It's just a few things. Maybe Dylan can jump there faster. Okay, that sounds better. There we go. All right, perfect. Thank you. All right. So, as a reminder, the Sustainability and Climate Plan is going to be one chapter of the city's comprehensive plan. So we have the Sustainability and Climate Plan, Transportation Mobility Plan, the Strategic Land Use Plan, and it will be known as the Environmental Policies element of the comprehensive plan. I'm going to let Dylan click because it's not. There we go. And here's a timeline. So we've been working with Canon Design and their team of consultants for about the past 12 months or so. And we're in phase 4 of developing that final plan. So we're nearing the end here. Right, next slide. And with this plan, we did a 2023 greenhouse gas inventory. So we've looked ahead to see where business as usual leads us. And if we don't change anything right now, it'll lead to a 60% reduction in emissions by 2050. But we really want to get to carbon neutral, or at least to 80% by 2050. So we have quite a bit ways to go. But as a reminder, 76% of our emissions come from buildings, and our per capita emissions are up from 2018. Although we are trending downwards, we have to make some aggressive changes to really meet some milestones to get to that carbon neutrality. So this plan is set up with looking at the next 5 years. So this is setting up those foundational elements. We're looking at the organizational tools, policies, and procedures, making sure this we have our infrastructure straight, and then we're continuing to improve and expand on existing work. So we're looking in that first section there, but then in 2030 and beyond, then we're ramping up and really getting honed in on those requirements so we can make sustainability and clean energy the standard here. So with that, it'll come along with some education and outreach, as well as like a cultural mind shift, but we'll do that based off how we've designed this plan. So this is a snapshot right out of the draft plan that we have right now. It's built into 3 pillars. And if you have any questions about the draft plan, please feel free to contact me if you'd like to discuss any part of it. So there are 3 pillars, 13 goals with 63 actions. And we tried to really reflect what the community wants. They want more connectivity, mobility, clean and resilient communities. They want to make sure the city has the capacity and to implement and maintain these types of strategies, as well as reduce reliance on fossil fuels. So with that, our next steps we're waiting and working on getting feedback from our department heads and core team. We're working on an opening letter from the mayor. And then with that, we'll review and revise a few things. So this is still in draft format. We'll do some more formatting, edit photos or maps. And then from there, hopefully the public will get a chance to review everything, provide some comments later in July or early August. And then we'll also integrate our greenhouse gas dashboard and report into the city's website, and then lead to plan adoption in early fall of this year. So there's a formal request to conduct a presentation and public hearing at a future planning commission meeting. Thank you. Any questions?
So I'll walk through, thank you, Alicia, for the
Thank you.
presentation. I'll walk through the list of commissioners. We'll start with Alderwoman Schweitzer.
No questions. I do look forward to reviewing the draft in depth, and I think it's a great idea to have a presentation at an upcoming meeting. Thank you.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
I ditto what Alderwoman Slicer said. I love the cultural shift that she mentioned in the presentation. Looking forward to being able to share when we're going to have the public presentation as well. I'm learning so much more about this as I go. So I'm just grateful that we're taking this intentional step for the city.
Thank you. Commissioner Fowler.
No questions. I look forward to seeing the draft and giving comments.
Commissioner Hayden.
No questions. Thank you for your work.
Commissioner Hubman.
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
No questions. Thank you.
And Commissioner Miller.
Well, yeah, so I had a couple. So we did this update a few months ago. I think we did a similar update. And at that time, we talked about the goals from city facilities and sharing that. So are we going to see that draft prior to the public hearing? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
And so does it include the metrics for where we are on facilities by facility or by department and what the goals are for each?
Sure. So because of this plan, we do have that 2023 greenhouse gas inventory. So I can share that with you, which shows what the emissions look like for a city building specifically.
Right.
And then those emissions factor into the strategies and actions that we have in Pillar C of the draft plan. So you'll get both of those.
Okay. So in addition to the emissions, do they have the utility consumption data? That's what I'm asking.
Not the explicit data like the kilowatt hours, but it's put into metric tons of carbon equivalencies.
And well, I know why you do that, but do you have both?
We do track both. So with this, I believe the best thing for us to do would be to take that like yearly or monthly data from our buildings and facilities and upload it into like a goal tracking tool or implementation tool such as ClearPath 2.0. And then we'll be able to kind of look forward and tweak things to see how we can project our emissions from there.
So what's the timetable that you're projecting that the draft to be available?
Yeah, so draft 3 should be available probably within the next 2 weeks or so.
So the ask of the commission tonight is we will vote on a presentation and a public hearing at a future meeting. So I would ask, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the presentation and public hearing at a future meeting. Can you call a roll, please?
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayden,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Chair Bradley.
Aye.
Motion passes with all present voting aye.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the
Sorry,
agenda
can we
tonight
get a clarification on
is
who moved to?
PDA. Go
We
ahead.
we couldn't hear down here who moved on that.
Who made the motion?
Who made the motion? We can't hear down
The
here.
motion. Paul Hubman.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Sorry.
Hubman. Got it? Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda tonight is PDA 011-25 ZTX, which is permitting and regulating ADUs. And Miriam, I believe you're going to do the presentation.
Yeah, I will. So it's a little bit of context here. This is one of 4 sort of near-term zoning text amendments that the Planning Commission decided to prioritize for this year. There may be a couple of others that we make, even as we're in the process of the more comprehensive update to our zoning code and map. Those would be specific to facilitating rebuilding after the impact of the tornado. So more to come soon on that. But this is a really important and exciting item. I want to right off the bat acknowledge Alderwoman Clark Hubbard for her leadership on this. I know this has been a long time coming. She pushed for this early on, and I'm just excited that we're finally here working on it, bringing this to the commission. And hopefully we can remove these barriers to accessory dwelling units as soon as we can. So tonight I'll be presenting some of the specific recommendations. I'm joined by several other members of planning and zoning staff that will definitely be invaluable in helping answer questions. But first, I'll quickly walk through the recommendations themselves. Next slide. So at a quick high level point of view, sort of here's the current situation and why we need to do this. So in our zoning code as it is, there's no definition for ADUs. It is a more modern land use in zoning talk, but of course, these uses have been part of our city actually since before we had a zoning code. But since there is no definition, they're treated as single family dwelling units, which means they do not meet many of the kind of area standards related to density and setbacks and so on. So basically what that means is variance every time. And that can add a lot of time, a lot of holding costs, and kind of frustration for everybody involved. And some people, because of that, will just not even try to do it. So at the end of the day, we're getting fewer accessory dwelling units added to our city, and those that are being built are at greater expense and greater frustration. So the goal is to reduce barriers and the need for special approvals in order to facilitate the construction of ADUs and all of the benefits that they offer. And the proposed approach is establishing a specific definition, establishing appropriate area standards that facilitate a range of flexible approaches, and to permit accessory dwelling units by right in all residential districts. Next slide. Real quick, I bet everybody here knows a little bit about what accessory dwelling units are, but for those who don't, they are smaller independent residential dwelling units located on the same lot as a standalone, though not necessarily a standalone, detached home. You'll see we're also going to permit them on lots of duplexes. They're sort of informally or colloquially referred to as granny flats or mother-in-law suites, kind of implying their frequent benefit and use as supporting aging in place. And they do exist throughout St. Louis, often in kind of a carriage house format. So they can be, those images at the bottom, detached and above a garage, that's kind of the carriage house format, or attached to a primary structure. Next slide. It matters a lot. Hit some of this earlier. They may not be like a cure-all for all of our city's housing challenges, but they are a very valuable and important tool. They facilitate multi-generational living. and provide some more care options for those who prefer to age in community or with their family. They support extended families who prefer to live closer together. They just generally expand attainable housing choices. They provide an option for rental income, kind of without converting existing starter homes in higher demand neighborhoods or elsewhere. And I think they can play a role in tornado recovery too, by adding another option for residents to stay in their neighborhood or even on their property to watch their belongings, to be present while their home is being repaired or reconstructed. Next slide. The strategic land use plan adopted earlier this year also gives pretty clear direction on this to support the creation of accessory dwelling units by permitting them by right in residential districts and through a number of tools and strategies, some of which we'll be engaging in later this year as well. Next slide. So now we're going to get into the proposed regulations. I'm going to do a pretty quick walkthrough, but all the details are here as questions arise. The goals and kind of the way we crafted this zoning code amendment, kind of with the knowledge that we're also engaging in a more comprehensive code update, is kind of fourfold. So to address and prevent common variance issues, so the types of ADUs that we see at the Board of Adjustment, we're going to just try to make it easy and straightforward to do. To incorporate best practices from around the country. And I want to thank ARP actually for doing a lot of great work on this. Their national policy team has put out a lot of great resources that we made significant use of. Also to tailor some of those best practices to St. Louis's built environment. You'll kind of see that as we get going, and to fit regulations into St. Louis's existing code structure, because they do have to be, find their way into our code somewhere and be administered within kind of the practices of how our code is currently administered. So the first part of the regulations are just clear, distinct definitions for ADUs. Next slide. So we'll have two definitions, or we're recommending two definitions, one for attached accessory dwelling units and one for detached accessory dwelling units. These two distinct definitions simply allow there to be kind of slightly different or additional area standards for detached ADUs as opposed to detached ADUs. Next slide. The second key piece of the recommended regulations here are to, next slide, simply add them as a permitted use starting in the A single family dwelling district. Kind of the, I'll say, magic or fun of our existing zoning code, because it's cumulative. If you add something as a use in A, it kind of waterfalls through the other districts. That's just how a lot of sort of legacy zoning codes were written. And that is how ours is still primarily structured. So permitting them in A allows for them to be permitted in any district where residential uses are permitted. Next slide. Then the third part here is the site requirements or area standards for all ADUs, both attached and detached. Next slide. So this is the site requirements for all accessory dwelling units. There are two slides here. So first, parking. We are not recommending a requirement of additional parking for ADUs, but if in the course of constructing an ADU, whether attached or detached, there's an off-street parking space that is removed, we are requiring that that be replaced somehow on site. Height, we are recommending kind of a standard 25-foot maximum height. Area or size of the accessory dwelling unit, we're recommending, it's a little bit complicated, but bear with me, that an ADU may be 50% of the area of the largest primary dwelling unit on the parcel, or 750 square feet, whichever is greater. So that's kind of the minimum, up to 1,200 square feet. So if you have, for example, a home that is 1,200 square feet, 50% of that would be 600, and you're then entitled to the greater of 600 or 750. So you would be entitled to 750 square feet, which is basically the size of like a 2-car garage. You can think of it that way. So a very common type of footprint for an ADU. And we didn't want to kind of overly sort of punish folks with smaller homes, right, who actually may even have a greater need for expanded living space by restricting them overly so to just 50% of the area of their unit. However, we also wanted to establish a clear maximum and have a general proportionality between the size of the primary structure and the size of the accessory unit. So for very large homes, we're allowing up to 1,200 square feet, which also matches the maximum dimension in the 2024 building code, not the building code that our city is currently on, but this is kind of a proxy for sort of an emerging national standard for the largest appropriate ADU. And some of the kind of large carriage houses in the Central West End are around this size. So this would facilitate kind of the recreation of that type that is, I'll call it sort of roughly vernacular to some of the very larger lots in our city. Next slide. The two other site requirements that would apply to all ADUs are density of population, where simply we're saying nothing about an ADU changes the minimum lot size required for units, just a clarification really. And then setbacks, we're affirming the average front yard line. So an ADU couldn't be built in front of a primary dwelling unit, and requiring a side yard setback of a minimum of 3 feet, which matches a general fire separation requirement in our building code. So just trying to align with that. So here's a good example of, shout out to Dylan Sabish for putting these together, what this would look like. So primary dwelling unit, about 900 square feet. Somebody could have, by the way, nobody's required to build. There's no minimum size for ADUs on our code. That would be set by the building code. So somebody could build up to 750 square feet. That's what that would look like in this case. Next slide. In a duplex case where we are permitting up to one ADU on a parcel with a duplex, and that's because, of course, our housing stock is a little bit fluid between single family and 2-family units in a lot of cases, and we didn't want to create a new incentive for down conversion to single units. We would look at the largest unit in the primary structure and apply 50% to that. So in this case, that's 1,300 square feet. We'd be looking for the larger of 650 square feet or 750 square feet, which is of course 750 square feet. That's what that would look like in this case. And next slide, just a third example with a much larger footprint single family home where somebody could build up to 1,200 square feet in an ADU. Next slide. And then the final piece here are just a couple of additional simple site requirements for detached ADUs. Next slide. Setbacks, just a separation of 10 feet from the primary dwelling unit, which again kind of aligns with the fire separation requirements of the building code. And then clarifying that non-conforming structures, so an existing foundation, say, of an old garage or a garage itself, could be built on top of, converted to an ADU. So, that's just a very common use case that we see at the Board of Adjustment, people wanting to repurpose garages, build on top of them, or demolish them, but then replace them with an ADU on the same footprint. Just want to make that straightforward. And this also helps consider corner lot situations where a garage may not meet the front yard setback or that we're separately requiring for all ADUs. But that's just kind of a natural place for an ADU. Next slide. Here's another example of why this kind of non-conformity regulation matters. This is, I believe, in the West End neighborhood, right against the Hodomont tracks. Next slide. So Hodomont tracks will be going through I'll mention that the We Collab plan explicitly called for ADUs, especially along the Hodemont tracks. So that garage at the back of this lot is like right at the lot line. So it wouldn't meet that 3-foot side yard standard, which is why that like permissiveness for nonconformity is helpful in this case. So yeah, you can totally imagine somebody wanting to convert that garage to an ADU or build on top of it, just as that neighborhood plan envisioned. That closes the kind of technical summary here. I want to quickly summarize the written comment that we received in advance of this meeting, 5 letters of support highlighting a few different themes about the value of adding density in supply constrained neighborhoods, that additional housing supply is kind of one way to support affordability citywide. There's also excitement about the permit-ready housing plans that we'll be working on, inclusive of ADUs. Also the importance of this type of housing option for seniors, for young adults, for caregivers, for others seeking lower cost housing. Some appreciated the specific recommendations. People support the policies that facilitate incremental and kind of low impact growth, because these can be sort of gently tucked away within the existing fabric. And then finally, kind of the importance of a pathway for by right approval of ADUs. I would like to, I think, turn to my colleagues in the zoning section to see if there's anything that you'd like to add about the recommended regulations. Mary Evans said nothing from him. Did you have anything you wanted to add here?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. So the only thing I want to add is I just want to stress that this is one of the most common variances that comes before the Board of Adjustment, because most often the AUD triggers a variance for parking. And if it's in the A district, it almost always triggers a density of population variance. So I think that it would be a big help for people that want to provide another housing option on their lot.
Great, thank you, Mary. And this may be a little bit in breaking of kind of the typical order, but I did want to ask if Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, because she has worked so much on this issue, if there's anything you wanted to add kind of in this presentation component, because you've really done a lot of work to get this moving.
The biggest thing I would add is just gratitude. So one thing the city of St. Louis will do is teach you how to really manage your expectations. Like I ambitiously introduced this legislation in 2023 and grateful for the relationship that I've built with Mary Hart Burton, who was able to call me in her office and say, slow down. You got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that. And then again, grateful for the relationship with Don and you, Miriam, and zoning staff and everybody, that every time I called on you all for this, this legislation, that advocates first presented, but AARP as well and others being able to continue to move it forward. I think this 2 years now, I'm grateful because I've learned so much about it through the advocates that show up and reach out to me behind the scenes, like what's going on with it, where are we with it? And seeing this today, I just really appreciate the work and the intentionality that you put in it, and even taking it up to now what we're dealing with in this tornado response, and knowing that this is, again, can now be used as an immediate response to that on behalf of our residents who have been impacted by this. I'm just, again, grateful is a good word. So thank you. And I look forward to working with my colleagues here and down at the board to bring this to fruition.
Okay, so at this time, we will have a public hearing. How we will handle the public hearing is, first we'll open the public hearing, then we'll invite in-person speakers to come to the mic. We'll invite anyone online in the Zoom chat to speak as well. Close the public hearing, and then we'll have questions and answers from the commissioners, just so everybody knows the lay of the land here. So at this time, I'll ask, is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Previous roll.
Okay, so I have a motion from Alderwoman Schweitzer, a second from Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, call for previous roll. Is there any objection to use the previous roll? Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. I do not have the list in front of me, so would you be so kind as to call the people up that are on the list? Or bring me the list and I will call them up. Thank you.
Up first.
Great, thank you. Okay, so our first speaker tonight is Emily Stava.
Hi, Emily Stava. I've lived in the city for 10 years and I thought that was a sign-in sheet, but I'm still. But I did come here because I was excited when I saw Alderwoman Clark Hubbard introduce that 2023 bill. We were watching it and we were hoping that that went through initially. We didn't know what all had to go on behind the scenes before it could pass, but we figured we'd follow it through to the end and come hopefully see it continue to move forward and succeed in this meeting. So I just wanted to say I'm deeply excited to see this come up again, and I hope it helps remove some of the barriers to introducing more housing to neighborhoods.
Thank you. And I should comment, we will give you about 2 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you. The next speaker is Jack Horrell. If I pronounce your name wrong, please correct me.
Yes, I'm Jack, sign in. I actually work with my local neighborhood association, and yeah, this is our most popular variance request as well for like letters of support on variance requests. And so it's good to see that there'll just be less people to have to do legwork on something that pretty much gets approved every time, except for all the roadblocks in the middle. And it's nice to see that there's been several instances where people have given up in the process too. And so it'll encourage more growth because it won't turn people away, even to just have to go through the hard process. But thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next speaker is Seth Nelson.
I was also under the impression it was a sign-in.
Thank you. So is there any more speakers in the room to speak on this particular item? Okay, Mr. Sodi. Okay, come on up, introduce yourself.
I, for one, couldn't find the sign-up sheet, so that's how we got here.
Please state your name, please.
My name is Enrique Riojas, and I've been living here in the city of St. Louis for around 4 years now, and want to speak in support of this amendment. I think it would be fantastic, not just it would allow someone like me at my state in life to actually have a house for once. So I am in support of that. Not only that, but it will increase, I think, very much the amount of people that we have in the city and the amount of people that want to stay in the city. Multi-generational living is incredibly important, especially among immigrant communities that we want to maintain in our city, and having them in established neighborhoods it's an incredibly important aspect of having the kind of foot traffic that makes our neighborhoods both safe and also prosperous. That is all. And I want to thank everybody here for the work that they've done.
Thank you very much. So there's no one else on the list in the room. Do we have anyone in the chat? No one in the chat. Okay, thank you. So at this time, we will close the public hearing. I'll ask for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved. Second. Previous roll.
Thank you. I have a motion from Alderwoman Schweitzer, a second from Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, call for previous roll. Is there any objection to use previous roll? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. At this time, we'll go through commissioner questions and answers. We'll start with Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the presentation. A lot of the things that have come up in my ward seem to be addressed by the information that you've shared today, including corner lots, including setbacks from neighbors' properties more than from the street or alley. That's one that comes up as an item of contention between neighbors when they are discussed in the ward. So I appreciate that being included. One question that I had was about if parking is removed, if there's required off-street parking, it has to be maintained. And this is just I don't know the situation. So in so many single family zones for people don't use their garage. That's why they might want to turn it into an ADU. I am not sure, I guess, if that is a required spot on their property or if it's not, because it would seem that if it was a required spot and they returned the garage into an ADU, it doesn't actually make it easier for anyone to build an ADU. But this is just my ignorance of this piece. Perhaps it's not required in that case.
It's a great question.
So say, let's just say my house, for example. I have a small garage that I never use. And if I wanted to turn it into an ADU, that is my quote unquote off-street parking. But I never use it as off-street parking. Never put a car in there. I don't even know if it would fit.
Should it count as
Sure,
existing
but does it
required
count and is it
off-street? Yeah.
required? And does that then negate anyone in A from being able to turn the garage into an ADU without adding a parking spot?
My name's Evan. I work for the zoning section. But yes, so in the instance of folks who have garages that may not be using them, that is a required space. So if somebody's going to convert that into an ADU, they need to provide a space.
Yeah, I think that's problematic because in my neighborhood, there is no other space to park. You know, the lot sizes are small, but no one uses those garage. I mean, I'm going to say no one. I'd say 1 in 5 people on my block might use their garage as a garage, but everybody else is parking on the street. So it would make it, and most people in my area don't have any additional room to add a parking. I mean, I certainly, if I'm just using me because I'm familiar with my lot. If I wanted to do that in my property, I couldn't because there's no way I could fit a car anywhere.
Yes, I understand. I think from a zoning perspective, though, nothing prevents them from building up and maybe improving their garage to then have,
Except cost, which is one of the big prohibitive things of doing this anyway, and people being able to stay in their house or in the city. They might be doing this to avoid having to buy a $400,000 house, you know?
Yeah, true. But
Yeah.
cost is not a true hardship when it comes to land use and zoning.
I get that. I would, especially as we are thinking through in the future of this commission and in the zoning code in general, removing or reducing parking requirements. I am not sure that I like that piece of this because I do think it would make it so many people would still not be qualified. Probably, I mean, I would think, and I'm just thinking of my neighborhood, anything on my block, they couldn't use their garage. They'd have to build a second floor in their garage to do this. And that doesn't seem like it really adds that kind of most people qualify, no variances that we'd be looking for. If the off-street parking would require them to get a variance every time, that might just be, now it's the variance for parking instead of a variance for the entire project. So I don't know if I have an answer today, but that's just a flag that I noted.
Well, I'll just quickly
Yeah,
add,
please.
I totally take your point. I think parking's tough. Parking can be touchy. On this one, we were kind of taking cues from kind of national best practices.
Yeah, I saw it
and
was the
seeking
ARP
a
recommendation.
balance, but I mean, I'll say, it is the planning commission's option to entertain like an amendment to the staff recommendation. I would personally see no, just speaking for myself personally as a planner, I would see no issue with that. And, we're kind of trying to strike a balance. So I'll just say, it's up to
I
you
would
all.
love to hear other people's input. I'm just one person and I can only speak from my experience in my ward and what I would consider normal in my area, as very few people use their garages, but I could see a lot of people being interested in having a space like this. There's a few that have come in front of you all recently where they're not adding any parking. Well, one of them, they're not changing parking. And then another one, it's not used as parking, but it'll be storage. So it's still not going to be parking. Those are just 2 in the last few months that I'm familiar with. So I'd be interested in hearing what other people have to think or have to say on all that. Mary has her hand up. Mary knows the answer.
No, I don't know the answer. I will
Too bad.
just to verify or to back Miriam up. We are trying to strike a balance. I think that when we were working on the legislation, while we saw in best practices that most places required them to keep the parking for the primary, some of us on the committee would have been okay with loosening up the parking requirements even more. But keeping in mind that this is an ordinance that would apply citywide. And so we're well aware that there are parts of the city where they like their parking, their off-street parking. And then I'll also say that our most common variance for the AUDs, oddly enough, is not in an existing garage. It's when somebody is going to the expense to build a new garage and then they choose to put the unit above it. I know that doesn't solve the issue, your immediate issue in your neighborhood. I just wanted to point out that that's not one that we see at the Board of Adjustment that often.
Interesting. Well, I appreciate it. And I do want to hear from other commissioners on this. If anybody has thoughts, when you're up to talk about it, those are my only questions. Otherwise, I think this is great and will really help out for people to take, as Miriam called them, smaller homes, starter homes, and make them something that can last their family longer, especially with rising housing costs and the interest rates right now. I can see a lot of people choosing to try to use their space more efficiently as opposed to moving into a more expensive home. So I appreciate the time and hope to continue the discussion. So thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
I'll wait to continue to listen and think through some of the things that were already, the feedback that was just given as well.
All right. Commissioner Fowler.
I have a couple questions or things I'd like to hear staff expand on. I think it's covered in this packet, but I just want to hear about two things. And then I also want to talk about parking, but I'll come back to that. Utility connections. I understand that from research, it's kind of like a thing that you want to leave up to the person that's building the ADU. I think of a couple instances where it could be an issue if, say, someone is building an ADU in an area where their house was destroyed by a tornado, and there's a lack of planning for utilities for one or both buildings. So I kind of want to, I don't want to get too in the details of like a situation, but was there feedback or what was the research that came behind not maybe recommending there be separate utility connections or sanitary laterals or anything like that?
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Does that question kind of, I don't know if I'm giving you enough to answer my question, but.
Yeah, I think our feeling is just that the options are going to vary so dramatically, location to location. And I know utility connections, I mean, kind of on their own, the expense also related to like water connections can be a huge barrier also to repurposing vacant structures as, the primary dwelling unit. I guess that's all my thinking, or that I feel I have to contribute, just that it's going to vary so dramatically site to site, neighborhood to neighborhood, situation to situation. And so not to have a specific regulation, also acknowledging like these are being built, people are kind of figuring it out, and we don't in the zoning code need to predetermine how they should approach it.
Makes sense. Okay. My other question was on kind of the sale. Sorry, let me get to the page. The sale of separate ADUs on one lot. I kind of think of a situation where, you build an ADU on one lot and you go to sell the ADU. I think of ownership of the parcel, all that stuff as being an issue. Is there any input from staff on like maybe that being an issue in the future? Like you sell an ADU, the owner sells the land. Now there's maybe an issue with, I just think it might be an issue for the future. I'm not really sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think where I would start is, but I welcome. I think the full outright sale, like in a conventional sense of ADU and land, would require a subdivision of the parcel, which would have to be evaluated kind of on its own merits by kind of through that existing process. I suppose there could be some creativity around like a ground lease or things like that. We didn't want to, so for members of the public here, Commissioner Fowler's asking about some topics on which our recommended regulations are kind of silent. And the reason we didn't address this is because there are kind of separate non-zoning processes that determine pieces of this, and we didn't want to restrict necessarily the creativity or kind of set requirements that zoning's not really set up to track or enforce, because sometimes that can create just frustration all around.
I think both
But
of them are
any-
good. I don't have
anything-
any objections to. I just wanted to hear explanations of what, why.
Just to add to, yes, the subdivision piece of it, I assume maybe that's not what you were describing when you said they want to sell it, but any subdivision would go through BPS, which is routed to zoning, has to meet certain definitions for lot, which requires street frontage and so forth. So yeah. And then I guess the other potential thing is that somebody could go through the assessor's office and do some kind of like HOA condominium situation if they're trying to coordinate some personal equity. So.
Great. The last thing I want to talk about was the parking. On the other side of the parking situation, I know there are situations where neighborhoods have, more units than people are able to park in those situations, or they have streets with cul-de-sacs where they may not be able to park on the street. I do think it's an area that we should kind of leave as it is written right now. And sadly, there are being situations where someone needs a variance to remove the parking requirement. I know specifically myself, my street is packed with cars. There's multiple multi-unit residences. And sadly, a lot of people do have cars, or they use it for storage, or they have gear or whatever in that garage or parking space. So I don't think I would be in favor of changing the recommendation that way. And that's just my input on removing parking requirement. That's all I have. I'm full support for this. I think ADUs are great. One day I hope to build one.
Okay. Commissioner Hayden.
Just a point of clarification. Thank you for your work on this. For the non-conforming structures, it says, the ADUs on an existing or above a non-conforming structure shall be permitted by right? No variance. Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Hubman.
I just have maybe a naive, broad, general question. Since this is a relatively new tool, an emerging tool, even nationally, is there would it be practical? I don't want to throw a lot of extra work on staff, but is it the type of thing where maybe it's practical to build in a flag after 2 or 3 years to take a quick assessment of what are the issues we're running into time and again, and then what might some solutions be for maybe you revise it, maybe you don't at the time or amend it, but just a trigger point after some time to kind of look at how it's working or not working.
Absolutely. I think conveniently, we are kind of with the comprehensive upgrade of the zoning code, that will
Right.
be a chance to learn from at least call it like a year to 18 months worth of experience and other kind of emerging best practices and recommendations nationally.
Right.
And that work will have the assistance, kind of full assistance of a team that's worked on zoning codes and zoning issues across the country. And we'll have the benefit of kind of a new modern structure for a code that will give us other options. I mean, there are things like kind of lot coverage that we didn't touch, or kind of landscaping or screening. And I'm not saying all of that would be appropriate, but the types of things we see other cities do just didn't have a natural place in the structure of our code. But all options will be on the table in that rewrite.
Right. Okay. No, I think that's a very good thing. I think this is great. But
Oh, yeah, sorry. I just want to add, I actually hope that with the new code, we see more kind of like reflection on the code and bringing you guys things that are working and not working as opposed to another 50, 60 years. And so I mean, some codes are, that's written in to their, zoning code that we're bringing it before you more consistently. And then I guess the other piece too is, and I've brought this up at other kind of commission things, but our form-based codes allow for carriage houses already. And they've been in place for some time now. And actually one of the earliest, well, before we had our 1950s code, obviously there was carriage homes, but there's a planned unit development in Old North that also has allowed them. And I don't know if Mary remembers, do you know what year that was by chance, or what era that was adopted?
No, it predates me.
So, 90s probably. So just to let folks know that there is examples of these things here.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
I just want to start by saying that I'm very much in favor of this whole thing. And was before the tornado, but like you said, now there's an even bigger need. And I think it's so important that we can let people stay in their neighborhoods if possible. So I think this is a really good tool to do that. I noticed that you mentioned in your presentation that this wouldn't create a minimum size of these. But I was going to ask about that because I'm not sure that that was clear to me in the way that it was written. And that could just be because I'm not a lawyer or it's not my first language.
Sure.
But should it maybe say that it can be up to 50% or 750 square feet?
Oh, I see. An accessory dwelling unit may be up to 50%.
I'm
and
just
so
wondering
on.
because now it
Would
says
that be a
maybe,
clarification?
and I at least had to
Yeah,
read it a couple
doesn't
times.
seem like it would do any harm. I think that isn't, I don't know, that's my reaction, that that's a nice add.
That's fine.
Syntax. Mary, you feel?
Yeah, it makes it more clear. Absolutely.
Okay. And then on the parking that Alderman Schweitzer brought up, I would be in agreement with her thinking on that. My thinking is if we don't have a really good, clear reason why we should not allow people to do what Alderman Schweitzer is suggesting, I don't think we should make it harder. I think it should just be as easy as possible to do this. And I would say that if you like your off-street parking, you can keep it. Making this amendment wouldn't take that away from anybody. If you live on a street where you feel like it's too crowded on your street to park there, keep your garage. That's all for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller.
Had a couple, the parking issue I was talking about, I kind of think would lean toward leaving it like it is, like you drafted it. That's one of the most contentious neighborhood issues that we have in areas with multifamily. And when you're talking about an ADU, building an ADU or converting, the amount of spend you're talking about is, if you did it yourself, 75,000, but a contractor, you're spending $150,000, $200,000 on the lot. And to me, a parking spot, getting it on the lot, in most cases in the city is feasible. I mean, it doesn't have to be a structure, just has to be a space. So I just think that we're probably better off just leaving that the way it is for now. And that's something, obviously, as somebody was just saying, it could be changed at a later date. The short-term rental discussion, it was ironic you picked out several cities and you have on your table here owner occupancy and the requirements in all these cities. Why did you pick these cities? And and I'm sure AARP read your statement about that. They don't recommend it, but all of these cities do have some kind of owner occupancy requirement. I understand you mentioned about AARP, but what are these cities experiencing, or is this new to them, or is this old? Their statutes are older. Do you have any feedback on that? Whether
Yeah, it's a great
they're-
question. I forget the years that these ordinances, I'm kind of looking to members of the team that help with some of this research. We selected these as kind of generally like cities or cities where we knew that they had recently been engaging in kind of a zoning code update. And they did take a different approach, and we were transparent about that. I think my observation is that that's often kind of a way to the owner occupancy requirement specifically can be a way to sort of assuage fears of sort of rented properties that start to go sideways. I think though in our internal discussion and with kind of the relative assurance from ARP, the feeling was, well, you know, maybe renter families are also in need of kind of expanded living space for an extended family or intergenerational living or a care situation. And there's kind of nothing distinct about like a owner occupant household and those needs. And maybe especially kind of new American households are more likely to be renters. And so we thought the owner occupancy requirement didn't align with the goals of this policy change. And I understand other cities kind of arrived at a different conclusion. I'll be honest, we didn't speak with them to understand kind of the history of how they did. But I think that was where we landed on it.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, one is owner occupied neighborhoods are generally more stable and have a higher valuation. But the trend in America is for investor-owned housing. We have a lot of hedge funds that build and a lot of builders. It's in all over the country. And some of those are good companies and do a great job, and some of them aren't. But that's just something that I think when you talk to the public, and that's why they chose owner occupancy in these other cases, is to try to get that illusion, maybe it's an illusion of stability. Because when you have an owner on site, things are different. And anybody who says that's not true, I mean, you can have bad owners, but in general, and you can have great landlords. So it's,
I agree.
okay, I just wanted to know about that. And I mean, I think overall, it's something that needs to be done. Is it the answer to our housing crisis? I don't think so, but I think we could get it out of the variance process. But I'd like to see if we stick with the parking, and then we'd have to review it. The short-term rental question is my last question. So we've had an issue with short-term rentals. It's been an issue for the city. I saw you punt it, but okay.
Well,
Respect
I'll
that.
quickly say, we did speak with people at the city kind of dealing with the legal challenge. And, you know, we simply cannot touch it right now while that is underway, while that legal issue is underway. And, well, I shouldn't interrupt your question, sorry.
Well, my saying is, we have short-term rentals in our neighborhood. The best one is when the owner lives 2 doors down the street. And he runs the short-term rental. Those are the best ones.
Yeah.
If the owner lives in Chicago, it can be a problem.
Yeah.
And do we need that in this mix? Is that the driver? I don't think that's the driver for these people who want an accessory building to do short-term rentals. I don't think that's the driver.
So
The driver is for mom and the kids and maybe some additional income. But I don't think short-term rentals is where you're gonna spend $150,000 on your lot to do that.
I agree. I wouldn't advocate necessarily for like facilitating the use of ADUs as short-term rentals a little bit. And then definitely, I'm going to toss it to you here, Mary, in a second, because I know you've been more in the mix on some of the legal issues, but just a little bit of background on kind of what the regulation strategy for short-term rentals was actually, so kind of in the zoning code to define it, allow it. The meat of all of those regulations, I would say, were actually in the building code, so revocation could be much swifter than the zoning processes allow. And in those building code regulations, and I don't believe that any of this that I'm about to describe was the subject of the legal challenge, but I could be wrong. In the building code requirements, the sort of licensing system that was established did make a distinction between owner kind of occupied short-term rental units and non-owner occupied short-term rental unit situations because but yeah, I think that's a material difference with short-term rentals to have somebody who's kind of living right there who can be responsive to a party that's going crazy or whatever number of issues can and do arise with short-term rentals. So I think at this time, I wouldn't see a difference to depart from that strategy, but that was all built outside of the zoning code so that there could be like really immediate revocation powers. So when those regulations are back online through whatever legal resolution makes the most sense, then those would apply to ADUs as well. Mary, did I describe that all correctly, or do you have anything to add?
The only thing I'll add is that my understanding is that the entire ordinance, both that in 26 and 25, dealing with the short-term rentals, is subject to the lawsuit. So therefore, we're not supposed to comment on it. And there will be a hearing sometime, I believe, before September, and that's when we'll know what the next step is.
So kind of a little bit of limbo we're in on that topic and its interaction with ADUs.
Thank you. So I just have one question, and that is about the parking. I'm hearing a couple of different things here. So Alderwoman Schweitzer described it very distinctly in the neighborhood where we live, that a lot of the properties do not have enough room to have an additional parking space if a homeowner wanted to turn the garage, the first floor, into an ADU, right? But just to be clear, they could still apply for a variance to do that, correct? So there is an opportunity to still do it. That's not an automatic no. It's just another process.
That's correct.
All right. We went through all the questions from all the commissioners. So at this time, we have an opportunity to someone to make a motion, and we can discuss that motion and vote on it and see where we go from there.
So moved.
And what is your motion?
Oh, yeah, is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we did want to do that. The minimum size up to. I agree with that as well. So I'm sorry, I take that back. So my motion, you want to go ahead and make sure you say it the way you
Well,
want to say it.
well, that's fair, but I wanted to check first because I would be interested in an amendment on the parking, but if there isn't broad support for that, we can skip that.
My count is 3 yes. So that's not a majority. But
what
that's
would
me
the
counting in the
amendment be?
background, doing mental math. So
What
I'm
would
happy
the
to take the vote. Do you have to recognize us? I'm sorry, I'm not
So
familiar.
what exactly is the motion we're proposing?
I think there's 2 motions that were being discussed right now. The first motion, which I think we have all the votes for, is changing the minimum, size, the maximum as up to 50%.
Or
Adding
750
that
square feet.
language into the board bill or the code that is being proposed.
So would you like to make that?
I would
motion?
love to.
Okay. I have a
Commissioner
motion.
Bradley.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you.
Previous
Uh,
roll.
Thank you. I have a motion from Alderwoman Schweitzer, a second from Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Call for previous roll. Is there any objection to use previous roll? Seeing none, the motion is approved. Okay, now let's discuss the second motion, please.
Thank you, sir. So the second motion would be to I guess I have a question before I would make a motion, is that if it's like I can't imagine a situation like this, but if it's a large unit that to get built had to have a certain amount of parking, if they build a second parcel on it, that removes all of their parking requirements, that adds a different wrinkle. So I don't even know what the motion would be. I would need more time for that. I didn't realize that this would be something that came up tonight on this particular issue. So,
So under one, it says off-street parking should not be required for the ADU. I think which answers part of your question.
so if the 80, do you need to recognize us? I'm sorry, I'm new to this commission. Or are we
You're
going to
fine.
just talk?
Yes,
Okay,
go ahead, please.
thank you. I didn't
No,
want to
no,
be
you're fine.
disrespectful to you, sir. So I guess if it's one parking spot removed and the ADU takes one parking spot or two, I don't even know how that gets qualified. This is new to me with if you have like a 2-car garage that you turn into an ADU and that's the entirety of the back half of your lot, you're not adding another parking spot,
Then you need a variance.
then you need a variance, which,
Or you can restrict the size of your unit, the footprint, the floor plan doesn't have to be as wide as your garage to get to the capacity that you want. You can increase the length. So you don't
Yeah.
even have to go up 2 stories.
I do think the issue, having been the one to bring it up, I do think the issue with this amendment is that it's a complicated thing to do on the fly at this exact moment.
Okay.
Procedurally, my question is, if there is an amendment that we work on that's made, in committee at the Board of Aldermen, for example, it comes back to the Planning Commission. Is that correct? Which isn't the worst thing in the world because that's what we're doing here, but also does take time and adds to the schedule.
So the only other way I see you could do what you're trying to accomplish is put a maximum number of parking spaces into the amendment. So 1 or 2, because I think that's what you're referring to, is small properties with a small garage. And that would eliminate anything larger from falling into that. So if you want to qualify that, I think you could do that.
Is it possible to have staff comment on any thoughts that they might have about the
Absolutely.
issues with that? I don't, I'm always cognizant of, the situation that puts staff in. If you're like, wow, that's a terrible idea, I'd like to know now before you make an amendment.
Well, I'm just thinking through some language. If the commission wants to do this, what I'm not necessarily recommending because this can be touchy and we do have this opportunity pretty soon to refine the approach here with ADUs through the ZOOP. But some language that could work, but Mary, Evan, correct me if I'm off. Parking B, adding an accessory dwelling unit to any parcel may remove up to 1 required off-street parking space for the primary dwelling unit. Something like that. Not recommending that necessarily, but just offering that language.
Does zoning have any feedback on that?
Want to
I was just saying, sorry, I'm thinking through, trying to think of scenarios that might show up and how we would apply this then.
Has the scenario ever showed up prior to now?
Well, no, because we treat them as a,
whole variance.
yeah, like it's a single family home. So you have to provide the 1-for-1 parking. So the phrasing you use that it may remove up to 1. If it's a single family home, that would potentially remove the 1 single family home. If it's a 2-family dwelling where you're required to have, it would help keep at least 1 parking space on that lot. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
And go ahead.
So I think it would work if that's the intent.
Yeah, I would, in my world as the Ward 1 alderperson and thinking about how people use their spaces in my area and again, I'm estimating here, I'm going to do some surveying this evening when I go home, but I would imagine that 1 in 5 people use their garage in my ward, maybe, for a car. I'm still counting 3 yes votes on this, but I will make the motion to, Miriam, to remove up to one, that exact language you just used, up to one.
May remove up to 1 required off-street parking space.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard something from Mary. Did we hear? from-
Oh, I
Mary?
apologize. Did Mary want to speak?
I thought I heard her voice.
She's like, no, please don't ask me.
Thought I heard her voice.
Yeah,
So you've made the motion?
I make the motion.
Is
Yes.
there a second? on the
Second.
motion? Okay, so I have a motion from Alderwoman Schweitzer, second from Commissioner Jorgensen. Can you call the roll, please?
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
No.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
No.
Commissioner Hayden,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
No.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
No.
Chair Bradley,
No.
and we have 5 noes and 3 ayes.
So the motion failed. So now we have an opportunity to either do another motion or to allow it to go to the Board of, I guess, approve it as is and go to the Board of Aldermen for an amendment and then come back to planning. Is that the correct path, Miriam?
Yeah, it would, I would say the planning commission should make its recommendation, whatever that means. And then, I mean, truly, the Board of Aldermen could make any number of amendments based on additional consideration and public feedback. And any amendment would have to come back for planning commission review.
Correct, but we would have to approve it in its form and send it to the Board of Aldermen.
That's
as
correct.
It is, and then they would do their thing, and if it changed, it would come back to us.
That's correct.
Okay. So is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
I have a motion to approve from Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Can you call the roll, please?
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayden, Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller. Chair Bradley.
Aye.
Okay, and the motion passes without present voting aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is action item as well. It is PDA 10705 RDX. This is the extension to eminent domain rights to complete Cortex 353. And I believe, James, you are going to do the presentation.
Yes, sir. Dylan, can you hook me up? All right. Good evening, commissioners. It's great to see you. I'm James Pfister, senior planner with the Planning Urban, pardon me, Planning and Urban Design Agency. I've got a little bit of a tickle in my throat and I've been dutifully sitting, rehydrating in my chair for an hour and I don't think it's worked, but bear with me if I cough a little bit. Oh, that'll just trip me up. Thank you. So this item is related to an approved Chapter 353 redevelopment plan. This is the Cortex redevelopment area. Specifically, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to present and ask the Planning Commission to approve the renewal of the initial blight determination for the redevelopment area. I'll get into the specifics of what all of that actually means. So let's get right into it. Let's hop into the weeds. Most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Cortex as an innovation district, but I'll give a little bit of high level background, particularly how the Planning Commission has been involved throughout the life of the Cortex West redevelopment area, and then I'll talk about what the specific item at hand here. Oh, one note, and forgive me if Miriam said this and I was not listening. That does happen sometimes. Great. There was an error in the staff report. We said that there would be a public hearing with this item. There is no public hearing with this item. Should the item come in front of the Housing Urban, what does HUD stand for? I should know that, right? Housing, Urban Development and Zoning. Thank you. I just say HUDs all the time. The HUDs committee, then there would be a public hearing then. All right, so Cortex was founded in 2002, this great partnership between the city and some major anchor institutions in the city, Washington University, SLU, UMSL, BJC, and Missouri Botanical Gardens. The Planning Commission was instrumental in establishing the district itself. The Planning Commission found that the area was blighted, and that was approved by ordinance in 2005. The Planning Commission solicited proposals for a new redevelopment plan. It selected and approved the Cortex West redevelopment plan. They recommended it for approval. You all, well, it wasn't you all, but this body recommended it for approval to the Board of Aldermen, and it was passed as ordinance in 2006. A redevelopment agreement was struck between the developer, Cortex West Redevelopment Corporation, and the city. We don't often bring Chapter 353 redevelopment plans to this commission. Typically, we're used to seeing Chapter 99 redevelopment plans. They're a little narrower, a little less robust. Chapter 353s are a big deal. They are often initiated in partnership with the Planning Commission, with the city. They represent one of the best examples of a true public-private partnership in redevelopment. Also, it was novel that the city blighted the area and then proactively sought a redevelopment plan rather than a developer writing up a redevelopment plan and approaching the city for approval. There were specific local and regional goals that we were trying to reach here. We're trying to establish a truly international innovation district. I've got all these techie mishmash words in my head, but it was supposed to be a real science and technology and research and production oriented redevelopment area with all of these partners at play. We're going to look at some of the things that it has achieved since its founding and since the plan was approved in 2006. Because it's relevant to what we're talking about today, just noting that the redevelopment agreement from 2006 between Cortex West and the city included the right to use eminent domain. The tools for eminent domain is broader than the simple securing of property. I have some guests with me from Cortex that will discuss a little bit about the application of the tool of eminent domain, how it has helped some of the transformational redevelopment that has happened in Cortex, and how they intend to use it should we renew the blight determination for the extension of the right to use eminent domain. Quickly, I'm just going to go through some of the more noticeable achievements of the Cortex Innovation District. Most of these you should be familiar with, but it's a thing that the commission and the city and the region should be proud of. So let's highlight some of those things now. Something that you'll notice is with all of these redevelopments on the screen, there's a year attached to it. You'll see that the redevelopment has been consistent and persistent over time. This isn't a thing that sort of flamed out or it has its best years behind it. The first building that was built as a part of the redevelopment area was Cortex 1 on Forest Park Parkway in 2006. Just behind that across Duncan, it's the 4300 Duncan building. Still looks great, built in 2008. One of the most noticeable landmarks as you're driving down 6440 is the Shriners Hospital. That was in 2015. Not all of the developments, the redevelopments and the assets within Cortex, exclusively serve members of the district. There are things that have been a benefit to the larger city and the region. They include the Cortex Metrolink station, which was completed in 2016, and also everybody's favorite place to buy furniture when you're in college and beyond, IKEA at Forest Park Parkway in Vandeventer. That was in 2016. And the most recent significant addition to the Central West End's skyline. I a couple of months ago, I was moving a couch from my dad's house and I had to rent a U-Haul, and it was neat sitting in the parking lot of the old Magic Chef building on Kings Highway in 44 and being able to see the WashU Neuroscience building, which was completed in 2023. So it's a big deal. Also, in addition to the properties and the buildings that have been improved, there's been significant improvement to the infrastructure and some of the open space within Cortex, making it a generally more aesthetically pleasing and comfortable place to be in, to travel to and through. This is just an example of a Cortex Commons, which is directly north of the Metrolink station. You know, I nodded to the fact that this is a national and international magnet as an innovation district. It's always great when St. Louis can be on a map with cities like Boston and Austin, and they don't all rhyme with Boston and Austin, San Francisco, Seattle, Raleigh-Durham. It's something we should be proud of as a city. That said, the redevelopment is continuing. The original term of the redevelopment agreement extended for 25 years. We're not at that point yet. There's still work to be done within the district. But it is important to note some of the, the developments and the projects that are not exactly led by Cortex, but it's hard to imagine happening without the redevelopment of this area. Biggest examples are the Brickline Greenway. Portions of it within Cortex are completed. Other portions of it are under construction or will be soon. The Tower Grove Connector recently broke ground. That will go up. It'll cross underneath the highway and go through Cortex and connect all the way up to St. Louis U's campus. Similarly, City Foundry, it's hard to imagine City Foundry happening and being successful without all of the strategic investment from this Chapter 353 redevelopment area across Vandeventer. That said, our guest speakers are going to talk much more specifically about what's to come in the next 5 years. So they look forward to your questions, I'm sure. As I stated, what we're doing here today is renewing the initial blight determination in order to preserve the developer's right to use eminent domain to complete the redevelopment of the area. This is really nuts and boltsy, but the developer, Cortex West Redevelopment Corporation, is not requesting an extension to use eminent domain. Technically, that was approved by this body and BPS and by ordinance in 2020 for an additional 10 years. But there is a state statute, which I will describe, which requires a renewal of the blight determination every successive 5 years. This graphic, I apologize for the small text, lots of information in here. This is a way to illustrate the sort of two concurrent reauthorization timelines. On the left in the yellow, that is the terms of the initial development agreement between the city and Cortex West. It was signed in February of 2006. It included the right to use eminent domain for a period of 15 years and an additional 10 years if certain criteria were met. In August of 2006, so after the redevelopment agreement was signed by the city and the developer, the state amended the statute for Chapter 353 to require that eminent domain based on blight can be reauthorized every 5 years by renewing the blight determination. So that kicked off this 5-year interval that we have been following since then. The blight determination was renewed by ordinance in 2010 and in 2015. At 2020 is where this reauthorization timeline syncs up again. The first 15 years of the right to use eminent domain had come to an end. In accordance with the redevelopment agreement, Cortex West Redevelopment Corp submitted a report saying that they had met the relevant criteria for the extension of the rights to eminent domain, extension of the right to use eminent domain. BPS passed a resolution stating that the relevant criteria had been met. The Planning Commission, this body, agreed, and the blighting determination was renewed, and the right to use eminent domain for another 10 years was approved by ordinance in 2020, effective February 2021. Well, 2020 was just 5 years ago. So that brings us to today. Even though we are halfway through that additional 10-year period for the right to use eminent domain that the city previously approved, it's time to renew the blighting determination one more time before the end of the terms of the initial development agreement. I wanted to touch a little bit on sort of the staff case for renewing this initial blight determination. First, the developer has been a fantastic partner with the city in achieving the goals of the Chapter 353 redevelopment plan. It's been pretty impressive, the amount of transformation from a previously, underdeveloped, underutilized largely industrial area into the premier urban innovation district in the country. They have been a good partner to the city, and the city has been a good partner with the redevelopment corporation. And this is me sort of acting like a younger brother, but in my mind, we did our part as a city. We set the terms by which the right to use eminent domain were agreed upon with the redeveloper. We said 15 years and then 10 years. After the fact, the city put this 5-year sort of renewal timeline on us. So we're doing our part. Yay for us. I did want to touch a little bit on the relevant criteria outlined within the initial redevelopment agreement that we used and BPS used to reauthorize the right to use eminent domain for an additional 10 years. So you'll see those here. There were 3 criteria that Cortex West Redevelopment Corp needed to meet. 1, that the developer remained a viable operating entity. 2, that in aggregate, not less than 1 million square feet of the land within the redevelopment area is in use or under development for the uses that were outlined in the redevelopment plan and the redevelopment agreement: technology, research, development, production, or ancillary purposes. And thirdly, that a minimum investment in such developments of at least $200 million in debt and equity had occurred. In 2020, the developer submitted a report detailing how they had met and exceeded those criteria. There's no requirement that there's new criteria that they need to meet or they need to reiterate any of these things. But they met and exceeded those criteria then, and they'll talk a little bit about the work that has been done in the past 5 years and the work still to come. So now I will turn it over to the petitioners, 2 representatives from Cortex West Redevelopment Corporation. And who wants to come up first?
I think we can kind of tag team.
Great. I'll have them introduce themselves. And just a reminder on the microphone, you're speaking, so people online can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Ryan Carmody from Carmody McDonald. We are here, we represent Cortex with respect to this issue. And we were here 5 years ago with David Meyer helping us out. So I might defer to him if you have questions that I'm unsure of. But just so the overarching point here really, and then I'll let Rob here get into what comes next for Cortex, because that's not really my piece of this puzzle. But what I would tell you is the statute, the way that it reads is that every 5 years we have to do a check-in, right? And the purpose of that is, do you want to renew blight in an area where Cortex hasn't done anything? And then we've just left this open redevelopment agreement with a developer that's not doing anything. So we come back and we do our check-ins with you. We present our information and we're asking you to find that the area is still blighted so that we can come in and use the power of eminent domain if necessary. And you'll hear that we haven't really used that power, but it is a tool in the toolbox. And I've seen many of you, and I've seen you before at the Board of Aldermen in here, where we've said, listen, we are using, for example, the NGA, which is obviously different because these are not owner occupied homes, right? These are maybe vacant buildings where Cortex owns a block, a vacant building where the owner hasn't done anything, and then another block. Well, we want to redevelop that block. How do we do that with a vacant property right there. And you may say to yourself, well, go buy it. Well, sure, that's easy. We can go buy it. But guess what? A lot of these vacant properties have liens on them, have other issues. And one way to completely clear title is to condemn. If you can use the power of eminent domain, you are wiping title clear. So any lien, any encumbrance on the property is wiped clear. And you can't do that if you're just purchasing a property in an arm's length transaction. So that would be a reason why we would use this tool. And we're really just asking you to allow us to have that tool in our pocket. We have this redevelopment agreement, the city being we. The city has this redevelopment agreement. I think it's through 2031, if I'm not mistaken. And we want to attract, I would argue, the city of St. Louis wants to attract developers to come in and to have this unique power to condemn if you need to. And obviously, if you sitting here agree to. But so this is really just a check-in. This is the last time, as you heard James say, that we can come in front of you and say, please extend us for another 5 years. We are not asking you that you technically find that it's blighted. We're asking you to renew the previous blight finding. Again, this is an industrial area, as you are all familiar with. This is not something where we are going to be, knocking down the doors of people or businesses that are productive members of our community. This is really just a tool where there is a specific need for a social or economic vacant building that's not helping our economy in the city of St. Louis, that Cortex could use to then build something and make that area better. So, I know the word blight's scary and the words eminent domain are scary and no one likes to hear them. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I'd also, if you have any questions for Rob here about what's coming next, I would just like to stress, and I think that most, if not all of you know that, Cortex really isn't in the business of going out and condemning a bunch of properties. They do try to work it out. However, in the case, in some cases, that's just not possible. And so we'd like to have the opportunity to use the power of eminent domain if we run across that. And the only way we can do that is if the blight is renewed for another 5 years. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Let's go through all the presentation and then we'll go through each of the commissioners for questions, please.
Good evening. My name is Maggie Crane. I have the privilege of serving as a senior vice president for public affairs for Cortex. If you will indulge me, we have a video that's about 3 minutes in length that I'd like to kind of read into the record for you, so you can get a feel for the development that has happened in Cortex because of this strong public-private partnership with the city. It is because of this that we are doing right here today that we have been able to develop what we have today of more than 42 buildings in over this 200 acres. And if any of you are a fan of Game of Thrones, I hope you are singing the theme song in your head. I don't think I could get it licensed. I'll narrate a little of this as we go. We just wanted to give everybody, we use this as a recruitment tool. We take this out on the road as we are looking to bring new business and new employees, new talent to St. Louis, of showing just exactly where we're located within St. Louis and where we are in relation to the world around us, so that you can see that we're a quick flight away and you can get to where you need to go very easily from St. Louis. our anchor institutions of WashU, BJC Healthcare, St. Louis University, UMSL, and the Botanical Garden are really so much of our strength. And so we wanted to also showcase just how close in proximity we were also to these institutions. It's a big selling point, as you might imagine, especially for biotech companies to be close to the mothership of WashU in particular. And yes, I think that you can see that new WashU med sign from space. That MetroLink stop is the only public-private partnership to date with MetroLink to create a unique stop. And that was something that the Cortex TIF dollars were able to afford. These plan developments are projects that are in the works, but are not fully out of the ground or have achieved a ribbon cutting at this juncture. And as we pause on this last one, where you're seeing some of these parcels, this really shows the development opportunities and why we're here. The fact that there is still work to be done. Some of those are also our bigger parcels. We also have these little bitty ones that can be challenging too, where the use of blight designation or having that kind of carrot and stick will also allow us to bundle those together to clear title and make that possible to sell as an entire parcel instead of this cherry picking kind of way of doing things. I hope that this is something that you all can be proud of, to know what's happening within Cortex, that there are mom and pop startups that are getting their training at Cortex, and there are biotech companies like one that I just interviewed yesterday at Woojin. Are quite literally developing cures for cancer, and it is all happening in our backyard. My colleague Rob is here with me too, and I want to turn it over to him if there are any specific questions about any of those properties. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Rob Soti. I am the VP of District Operations at Cortex. If you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. Yeah. Here's just a brief summary of kind of the redevelopment that's taken place to date, as well as kind of the pipeline of existing projects. We've got the the Goodwill building at WashU is doing, former legal services building at 4232. Let's see, the infusion pharmacy for BJC. And we have a number of apartment projects that are in the pipeline as well. So those are basically fully entitled projects that are taking place on land that's already been, dealt with from a development standpoint. So if you want to go to the next slide, these are the real future development opportunities. So we actually own, between Cortex and our related entities and institutional partners, about 24 acres of surface parking lots. 6 parcels are totally vacant, majority owned by Cortex, and those are the 2 lots in the blue at the top, as well as the surface parking lots kind of around the silos that you'll see at Clayton and Sarah. And then as far as undeveloped or underdeveloped parcels not owned by Cortex or related entities, it's mostly scattered parcels totaling about 14, consisting of about 10.5 acres. So that's really what this tool will be used for in the future. And it's not really our intent to use it for taking property, more so for resolving encumbrances, securing easements. As you guys know, this is a heavily industrial area, and railway spurs are kind of sporadically spread out through Midtown. So we've had to get rid of those. As Maggie said, consolidating irregular or underutilized parcels, and then really using it as a negotiation tool with a legal backstop. It helps us control the vision that the city set out for this redevelopment district and forces people who are selling or entities that are selling their property to really come to us first. And we can help ensure that that property gets transferred into a higher and better use according to what the city's looking for. And Maggie, did you want to talk on this slide at all? Yeah.
I just want to quickly mention that this is the total tax revenues that Cortex has thrown off to the city, and it's in various entities here to the tune of more than $151 million since we started our TIF activation, which was in 2014. Of course, the TIF and the blight renewal are not related, but we wanted to show you what Cortex is also doing as a good partner to the city. As you entrusted Cortex, the organization, to do the development, this is the development that's getting done.
And here are some examples of some properties that, are still indeed blighted or, obsolete. Having the blighted designation really allows us to use that stick as a negotiation tool. A lot of the properties in Cortex have what we call a PDA or parcel development agreement, which does give us as master redevelopers the ability to really enforce building standards. Not every property has that, and the threat of eminent domain or partial taking of a property can sometimes be used in those situations to really get a less than agreeable property owner to start making positive changes to their property and keeping up with peeling paint or broken windows, fencing in parking lots, those types of things.
All right, great. At this point, we'll turn it over to the commissioners for questions and discussion.
Great. Thank you for the presentations tonight. Very informational. We'll walk through questions from commissioners. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. That was very informative presentation. A lot of my questions were answered within it. The one that, for the, I guess, looks like 25, was it about 25 acres that are not Cortex owned this time?
So 24 acres are primarily owned by Cortex or
Right,
related
6.
entities
Yes,
and
6.
institutional partners. And then 6 acres are majority owned by Cortex or Cortex related entities. Those are just vacant parcels. And then the scattered sites that are unrelated to Cortex or WashU or BJC, it's about 10.5 acres.
Okay, it's just in the beginning of the letter that you all sent, it said it was 55 acres of undeveloped, so,
Correct.
okay.
So
So that only
kind
adds
of
up
breaking
to
out
40.
underdeveloped properties or that are kind of non-conforming to Cortex's intended use.
Okay.
For example, Salvation Army owns probably 10 acres, but they're not listed in our kind of scattered parcels for purposes of redevelopment opportunities.
Because you don't plan to do anything with that one or not?
They fill a critical need for the city and they're kind of an anchor to that side of the neighborhood.
I
So-
definitely agree with that. That's great. I was just trying to have 55, get it to 55 acres of
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
They're somewhat
here.
separate.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Are there, for those sites that you all are hoping to develop, are those ones that you've had people reach out to you with interest already? Or is it kind of, once this is approved, then that happens, or what are your thoughts on that?
Some of them, yes. On some of them, no. But I think kind of the key takeaway with this tool is having the optionality to be able to use it. There's a lot of companies that come to us or they come to Greater St. Louis Inc. and say, hey, I want to open my business in St. Louis, but I need 75,000 square feet. for manufacturing. And we need to be able to help put that together. And that's part of what we're thinking. So
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Those are
Yeah.
all my questions.
Thank you. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
I don't really have any questions other than asking for a copy of the presentation, just to say that I've been on the other side of this and seeing how you all absolutely take full advantage of these tools. Also, knowing that, to your point, people use these words, throw them around, and sometimes weaponize them when they need to just be adversarial with them. But when you see the outcomes of this work and what you all do, it's hard to argue with that. So having that, again, their presentation for me not only is inspiring, I just feel like if it can be done there, it could be done in other areas. That's it. And so I did, and just notably, I want for the record that I reached out to Alderman Browning, and, with his support, and the work that he's doing, thumbs up, I was like, well, that's all I really need to hear, because I know when they're on the ground, him and the former alderman, seeing it again come to fruition is inspiring for somebody like me that wants to see that kind of growth in the area that I'm representing as well. So thank you. And don't forget, I'm not kidding, I do really want their presentation. I think it'll be good for me to share it with our HUD's committee, even in preparation as we move forward.
thank you.
Commissioner Fowler.
I don't have any questions. I like what you guys are doing in the area. It's just awesome, I think. And like you said, sometimes you do need these tools. Not that you need to use them, but they're options. And you never know what you'll come across. I mean, you guys are doing great. You're showing progress. It's a good impact. And a lot of people that work in the area. So no questions, just supportive.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hayden.
Thank you. I just had one clarifying question. So for the parcels that you all have eminent domain and not necessarily filled with a tenant or redevelop, what are you all doing with those? Do you all like secure the buildings? Do y'all upgrade the building? Like, 'cause some of the parking lots, surface parking lot really needs some TLC in the meantime. So like what have you all done with the parcels that
So-
you have eminent domain with no tenants?
Eminent domain, to my knowledge, has only been used one time with a full taking of the property in Cortex. And that was to secure the property on the east side of Sarah, kind of where the south silo parking lot is located. And that was believe that timing was around COVID, right before COVID that took place. And as everyone knows, the pandemic really kind of changed the office dynamic for a lot of people. That parking lot was really necessary pre-COVID, and as working from home and those types of things have changed and impacted how people return to the office, it's definitely been less utilized. But we do have development plans in the pipeline kind of adjacent to that site where that parking will be utilized.
Commissioner Hubman.
I don't have any questions. Just a comment, 5 years is not a lot of time to achieve everything that you kind of are outlining. But it's fantastic what's happened over there.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Thank you. Nice presentation. I like what you guys are doing. Could you speak a bit to the limitations on this power? Because you're talking about vacant properties and you don't really need to use it anyway, but where's the limit on what kind of properties you could use this for? For instance, I don't want to see narwhals going.
Yeah, I think to that point, we value the retail component within Cortex, and quite frankly, there's not enough of it. So we wouldn't be utilizing it there. It's really for properties that are not contributing to, the greater Cortex vision, and whether that's underutilized slivers of, adjacent parking lots, derelict buildings. And then sometimes it's just a tool to use, as from a carrot and stick standpoint, to say, hey, we need you to take care of your property, because if you can't take care of it, we'll find somebody that will.
Okay. I'm still interested in the legal limitations because I understand your intentions, but I don't know you. And what if somebody else were in charge suddenly, so what are the legal limitations on it?
So the legal limitations are that the property would have to be blighted, which is why we're here today, right? So they don't meet the social or economic goals. They're not viable. Ones that you look at and you're like, this is derelict. This is not a tool. And the whole concept of blight is not, we see a nice restaurant and guess what? We've got a real great idea for a building to go there. No, you cannot do that. These are properties that have not been taken care of. And to Rob's point, which is why he's saying, hey, the way you're keeping your building isn't in conformity with our view of what this area should look like. So clean up, or it will become blighted, and then we may have the opportunity to take that from you. So that's where the limitation lies. There's not just some overarching power to be handpicking properties. They have to be in bad shape and meet the statutory definition of what blight is.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
Can somebody talk a little bit about, I know 353 statute includes tax abatement. So the city has spent considerable time talking about tax abatement benefits over the last 15 years. So when you started this, it was a totally different environment. You're out in the wilderness building this thing. So where are we on tax abatement today? Has that changed at all over the last 15 years? As all the discussion throughout the city about the use of tax abatement has?
Yeah, I think, tax abatement as a tool is definitely beneficial in some cases. And the 353 does afford us the right to grant that. But in, the 20 years of Cortex's history, I believe it's only been used twice. And because of the funding mechanisms of Cortex, we're heavily funded by our TIF, and tax abatements by their nature are kind of go against the point of having a TIF because you're decreasing that incremental revenue to the city. And we actually have covenants in some of our bonds that prohibit us from granting tax abatement because it goes against how those bonds are paid back. And really, we have an internal policy of not granting tax abatement. It's come up 3 times in the past 2 weeks with other developers, and the answer is flat out no.
So you mentioned the TIF. So it has a similar impact on the entities. You had a table up here.
Yes.
On tax revenues. And so when I noticed the table, the city had the highest amount of tax revenue over the life. Yeah, that one right there. So the city has $41 million in tax revenue. St. Louis Public Schools has $25 million in tax revenues. Well, if you pay your tax bill like I do, the school district gets 70%, 60% of property tax revenue. So how is the city, I know how to answer, but the city is far outstripping the school district, and that's their major source of funding. So on a TIF, what have we done in the last 10 years on TIFs in terms of the allocation among the tax entities? I know Missouri Botanical Garden is one of your partners, and they are in that as well.
Could you ask your question a little differently? I'm a little confused.
What I'm trying to say is, on TIFs, are you doing payments in lieu of taxes? Or are you passing certain, we've had this discussion in the city for years, the last 10 years, about reducing the amount of TIF funds that go to the developer and trying to increase the amount of funds that go to our taxing jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And that's been going on. So I'm asking you if that's impacted Cortex in the last 10 years. I know you've been a part of that discussion because I've read.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Miller. I appreciate the question. TIF is used in very small increments, truly. The most recent one that we just passed was to retain C2N. It is a company that has developed a blood test to determine whether Alzheimer's drugs work. They're on a rocket ship for success, but to build out a lab that they need is $400 a square foot. And they're on a rocket ship for success, but they're still trying to get off the launch pad. So in St. Louis, we don't have what we call graduate lab space, meaning going from being that nascent, young fledgling startup to showing up on the NASDAQ, being publicly traded. There's nothing in between. So when you have a company that needs more space, but can't yet afford true market rates, that's where the Cortex is an ideal place for them to land. Because we're a nonprofit, we can make money, we can lose money, we can't run out of money. So in order to help them stay in St. Louis, they were being headhunted aggressively by Deerfield, Illinois, and Boulder, Colorado, where they do have these very step-up graduate lab space sort of things. We were able to retain almost 200 jobs and growing for here in the city of St. Louis, and they are all making more than 6 figures. So good quality jobs that have a payroll tax and everything else. But we used a $4 million TIF just to help them build out this lab space, that we would lose them otherwise. God forbid they decide that they close up shop. We now have that amenity because we have put in the funding to be able to attract or retain the next company that is in the same type of boat. So, the way that a tax increment works, of course, is the schools and the city and everyone else are always getting that basis. But this is for the goodwill building, which is it was a nonprofit, so it wasn't bringing in much money, and it wasn't of a higher use. That now redeveloped is going to throw off a lot more taxes on that increment because it is now going to be home to biotech companies and WashU as the redeveloper. I'm not sure I fully answered your question, but we really try to use a precision knife in the way that we use TIF and the checks and balances that we also have. While it is the Cortex TIF, we must come before the Board of Aldermen every single time we use it to make sure that we're getting approval, that the board agrees that we're doing it for the right reasons.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I think Don has some comments he'd like to make.
I do. And so one of the things, and Maggie, thank you for that whole analysis of what you just did with our competition from other parts of the country and what the qualities are that are going on here. So I was the city's project manager for the creation of Cortex. And prior to Cortex, there was also a study done called Technopolis. And I was the project manager for that. There was a local consulting firm and a number of people that sort of contributed to it. Why I bring this all up is you heard them mention the idea of this was industrial area. There's still some remnants of that industrial, but one of the things is that we need to realize that the Planning Commission and this work to create a 200+ acre redevelopment area was somewhat earth-shattering to how we were doing things. You're so used to seeing a single parcel being applied for tax abatement. So this was an area that was determined to be blighted. You heard there were 2 steps, determined to be blighted, that once was the site of the Studebaker plant in St. Louis. So, and you see in the geography, the bookends to this, the WashU Medical Center campus, the SLU campus. In that in-between area were these industrial things that were referred to in the past. So this analysis of Technopolis, comparing and looking at those other cities around the country, came up with, 220 acres here, we're going to blight it, and it should be used for purposes that are creative in terms of economic growth and opportunity. And yes, the Technopolis laid the thing for that. Planning Commission did the blighting area, and then we solicited publicly for developers to come in, and that meant a master developer for the whole 200 plus acres. And that's important. It was a process that we had local players in place understood. And Cortex was created, and they're still the master developers today. So our context gets to be here is the change, the volume of stuff that's going on there. I haven't heard you mention the number of employees that were in the Cortex geography. Is there a number for that?
Yeah, Don, we're around 5,000 employees and more than 375 companies or entities. I say entities because a lot of them, we also include labs. And a lab is kind of unique because it acts as a company. It has its own payroll lines and so forth, but it might also be pulling in NIH grants and the like as well. But 375 different entities do business within those 200 acres. Thanks.
Good to hear. As we've heard, blighted area, industrial area, it's now what they just described it, catalyzing and doing a lot of things. It was terrific to get the Metrolink station there. It was a big fight to get it there because it's actually close to the Wash U station. But of serving the employees that go there, making that opportunity was a big thing. So my punchline to this is what they're essentially asking for is in that 200 and some odd acres, that there is still some work to do. And having this reconstitution, revalidating the blight study allows them to use the tools that will help them, quote unquote, finish the job.
That's exactly right.
Thank you, Don.
And the other reason, that's the reason I snickered a little earlier when Mary made something about going back in time. I had to snicker, says, oh, we're going to come up with the Cortex. That's going to go a lot further back in time. And I was here. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Bradley. I was just asking, and I reached over and asked as well, because I know in my position how the public will work, and somebody will roll over in the middle of the night and say they're trying to close Norwalls. And so if you could just speak, we may understand, but there might be somebody that doesn't understand what that process looks like in this toolbox that we talked about, that you've only used once here anyway. But what does eminent domain look like, and what does that process look like?
Okay, so first of all, Cortex would have to determine that something is blighted. And so I just want to read you, I didn't bring the statute, but I just pulled up the statute so that everyone understands what the term blighted means. It says an area which is in sanitary or unsafe conditions, deterioration of site improvements, or the existence of conditions which endanger life or property by fire and other causes, or any combination of such factors, retards the provision of housing accommodation, or constitutes an economic or social liability or menace to the public health, safety, or welfare in its present condition or use. So Cortex would first have to make that determination. It has to fit within that, right? Like I was saying, it can't be just a one-off to Narwhals or what have you. So after that determination is made, then they say we need to use the power of eminent domain. And there's certain negotiation tools that have to happen pursuant to the statute. So pursuant to statute 523, we have to then send you what's called a 60-day notice or a notice of intent to acquire. So we're telling you, listen, we intend to acquire your property because it's blighted, right? And then next becomes a 30-day offer letter where an appraiser has to appraise the property and then say, Cortex, this is what the property's worth. You must offer fair market value for the property, right? It's not just whatever they want it to be. It has to be what an appraiser determines it to be, what a willing buyer would pay for a willing seller's property. Okay, so that has to happen. And a lot of times in condemnation cases, we call them friendly condemnations. Like I said, we agree on a price. This happened a lot actually with the NGA. We agree on a price, but there are so many liens and encumbrances and people have so many interests on your property. We have to go with that through the court to get all that washed out. So, and there's certainly many a time, and David can tell you as well, where we end up not condemning because we've come to, maybe they're going to clean up their blight. Maybe we reach an agreement and they don't have a lot of encumbrances. So there is a massive process that's in place before we go to the court, or Cortex would go to court and say, we need to file a petition in eminent domain and condemn this property. And even after that happens, there's a process where other people are determining the fair market value. So I just want to make it clear, and that's a good question, that this isn't something that obviously they take lightly since they've only done it one time. And it's not something that they're standing here asking you to do so that we can go in and condemn out a bunch of properties. That's just simply not the case here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was going to add to that. David Meyer just emailed me and said that when they were assembling the ground for IKEA, they actually had to use it for eminent domain for a small strip of land there. So 2 times. But this really isn't a first option for us. This is really like the last mile solution to really deliver higher and better uses for the land within Cortex to help the city out. So.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So at this time, the requested recommendation is that the planning commission renews the initial blight determination for the extension of the right to use eminent domain Cortex West redevelopment area as required by Missouri Revised Statute 523, and recommends approval to the city's Board of Aldermen. So at this time, I will ask, is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
So the motion was made by Commissioner Fowler, seconded by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Correct? Okay, can you call the roll, please?
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayden,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Chair Bradley,
Aye.
and the motion passes with all present voting aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right, so that wraps up our action items for tonight. So now we have a brief update on other major planning initiatives by Miriam.
Promise this time. Next slide, or whatever skipping we have to do. Next slide. No, I don't have updates. Can we actually skip past happy to answer questions about what's going on, but there's a lot going on and there's a lot we're trying to adapt to be sensitive and thoughtful to the context of the tornado. We're still working through that. Next slide. I did want to publicly congratulate Commissioner Bradley for, I did not intended as embarrassment, but I saw this nice acknowledgement in the East West Gateway local government briefings and just thought it merited attention, this very nice recognition of his career of public service here tonight. Congratulations.
Planning initiative.
You're right. It's not on the agenda. I'm wild.
Get rid of this.
That's it. Next slide. Yeah.
So the final is the executive director's report, Don Rowe.
So I'm going to take a little bit from, Miriam didn't go to this, but as we talked about the ADUs today and whatnot, the Zoop update is in progress. It's a big deal. It's long overdue. After our discussion about the ADUs, when we do have the planning commission meeting about adopting the full overhaul of the zoning code, we will convene at 5:30 as we normally do, but to allow enough time, it will be 5:30 a.m. Anyway, part of that, what it is we keep learning, and thank you for the citizen volunteers and the members of the committee of the planning commission that are appointed to come here. The Zoop is a needed, big needed thing. It's going to be transformational. It's going to help with processes. And I think one of the things we reminded ourselves tonight, talking about the ADUs, we probably ought to put some measure in it that there is a periodic review of its success and evaluation and relevance once we create it. I think that would be good. Couple little updates. Today, the Millennium Hotel, which was a part of a planning commission review of a Chapter 99 last fall, it was announced that the not-for-profit in charge of the Gateway Arch area is now firmly the owner of the site. So the redevelopment plan can go into effect. And that's a good thing that's was announced today. Also, I heard today an important announcement about another Cortex is 200 acres. The NGA site itself is 100 acres. And the director of the NGA announced today that its grand opening will be September 26th.
Wow.
Yeah, just around the corner.
Wow.
That's all I got.
We have no delegated items. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second, previous roll.
All right, no objection to previous rule, so we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Narwhal?
Narwhal. Everybody's going to Narwhal. Except for baby.
I'm not invited.
Yeah, no, you gotta get the merch.
Yeah.